One thing a lot of video game critics have been just harping on is this idea that Sony does not have a vision, that they lack vision, and that they have become a very Me Too company where, Nintendo, they've got this brand new direction where they're trying to both sell to the kiddies. Yes, I know video games are not supposed to be age-oriented. That's bullshit, actually. They really are marketing towards the younger audience with games that can be enjoyed by a younger audience with the Mario and the Pokemon. Of course, good stuff, but it does not always appeal to the adult mind who wants something that's a little more rough edge now that they are a little bit older and they've gotten tired of the childish stuff. Hey, it is true. There is a reason why sometimes, even if you got Toy Story and WALL-E sitting on your shelf, you'll throw in something like The Matrix or Fight Club or whatever. Sometimes you do just want something that's just a little bit more mature. But that's not the rant here. I enjoy both styles of games, but yes, the games and the system is marketed towards a more younger audience there, and it's also being marketed towards your mom or your grandma who will play Wii Sports and that's just about it, or your mom who's going to buy the Wii Fit and then maybe play that once before shoving that under a couch or something and never touching it again. And maybe they'll own like 2 other random ass games that they just bought at Walmart without actually researching anything, and they'll be horrible. Know many people who do this. Yes, Nintendo has a game plan there, and yes, they are putting out great games as well. Of course, watch the rest of my videos if you don't believe that. I feel this way. And then you have Microsoft, who's going towards the more hardcore gamer. The people who stereotypically like to play very late into the night with the headset on, shooting the hell out of people. That is something they are definitely marketing themselves towards. They're also trying to go after games that rely on a little bit more hardware than, say, something on the Wii, where, yes, the graphics are actually pretty damn good. They're going for the hardware stuff and the shooter Twitch action gamer as well. And of course, they got their other games here and there, but this is what they're primarily marketing themselves towards, as well, of course, as the online functionality, which is something that Sony has not really been able to do that well. And then Microsoft is also trying to go in this new direction with the Kinect. Now, this is kind of sort of approaching Wii territory, but it is something different. This is a unique type of thing. All in all, it's, get this hand-free gaming thing going on. Not something that really appeals to me, but they do seem to be going for the wider audience. But what is it that Sony is going for? What is this big title that the PlayStation Move is coming out with? The PlayStation version of the Wii Remote, except it has a little ball on the top and it's apparently being tracked by the little camera that sits on your television. What is Sony going for? What is their big title? They got a sports championship. Oh boy, they're going after the exact same audience that Nintendo is going after. And this is heavily one of the reasons why people often consider Sony a Me Too company. Because what is it that Sony really tried to do with the PlayStation 3? Was there actually a vision there? I do believe that there was a vision with the PlayStation 3 that perhaps a lot of people don't see because it does not have an easily tacked on name. It's not motion control. It's not necessarily hardcore gaming. What they were trying to do, and in a way I can kind of respect this because it was somewhat ballsy, they tried to really push tech. They probably anticipated, at least someone there, that when they announced $599 US that you'll need to save up for over the next 2 years to hopefully be able to buy this thing, that this was going to be something that was an investment. Although they also tried to go after a new type of hardware that has not been done before. Arguably, the PlayStation 3, although it gets most of the same games that Microsoft's Xbox 360 gets, has technically better peak performance if the game is programmed for that. Although the major downfall of this is that the PlayStation 3, in order to take advantage of that, unless you're making an exclusive and you've really invested your time and money into learning the PlayStation 3 hardware in and out so that you can use the little workarounds and programming magic that needs to be performed in order to create a game that really takes advantage of the PlayStation 3, it is a nightmare to program for. And it is not something that is easily done. I think Sony really shot themselves in the foot here, where they were going for hardware and perhaps better graphics, which may even potentially expand into better game experiences, not necessarily gameplay, but just better overall experiences if developers could actually take advantage of it, which they have not. What has Sony really been able to do that the 360 has not been able to do? Even the exclusives, I mean, Lair with all of the flying dragons and enemies on the ground, yeah, it looks great. Could that be done on the 360? You know, it's a good question, but you know what? Halo Reach comes around and that game looks fucking fantastic. And do you really need something that looks better than that at this point? Not really. Take your Bayonetta or anything else. Of course, Sony also has the Blu-ray, so sometimes things get a little compressed when they hit the 360, but overall, Sony was going for the hardware, and that is where it failed. They seem to be doing that right now. I mean, what were they hyping with the PlayStation 3 at the last E3 for what seemed like an eternity? 3D televisions and 3D gameplay. Who the hell owns that shit? Not a single person I know owns a 3D television, and not a single one of them actually plans on buying one. I've used a 3D television at Best Buy once because it's not like real people have these things yet, and you know, it kind of looks cool, but it is not something to really invest in. It's not time to buy a PlayStation 3 for hundreds of dollars and then buy a brand new television, especially if you're like most people, including myself, who just bought their freaking expensive ass television just a couple years ago. It's really not time to replace that TV just yet. It was 1080p, it looks good, it's just the right size for my living room here. Could be a little bit bigger. You know what though? Screw you, Sony. I do not need to invest in that. And really, what's going to be taking advantage of that? Killzone 2 or 3 or what the hell else? Some other big name first party Sony games that don't really even need it. That is the unfortunate thing. They are kind of pushing beyond their means. Now, I am a person who really enjoys tech and following tech and just getting excited and hyped about technology. So there is a part of me inside that appreciates that somebody's doing this so that hardware does not remain stagnant, and so this sort of encourages Microsoft or even Nintendo to eventually bring their hardware up to the same level as well. But this is a lack of vision. This is not a lack of vision. It's nice to have the Blu-ray player as well. This is a lack of knowledge of the industry. People are not interested in this shit. Sony right now is emphasizing hardware over gameplay. You want to know how I know this specifically? People are going to consider this like a minute jackass reason, but this is how I know that someone high up in Sony headquarters decided that they were not going to be caring about gameplay nearly as much as they should. And what is this reason? 2003's Sony PSP. I was hyped about the PSP. I own a PSP. There are games on there that I think are great, and there's typically a game or two that comes out every year that I end up getting for the system, and it's something that I am glad that I own. However, while they were going for console-like experiences, which is something I kind of appreciate. Sometimes when you're playing your DS, it's kind of like, you know, these games all start to look the same, and you just want something that looks good for once. And, you know, I'm being a jackass here. I don't mean to be a jackass, but, you know, you pick up something like my first PSP game was Popolocrois, or was it Mega Man X Maverick Hunter? It's a good question. One of those two games were my first games, and it was really nice to have that graphic capability on a handheld game. I could take the system around and play wherever the hell I wanted, and shit looked good, and I really enjoyed that. However, one of my other first games, this was a present, actually, Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max. Or was it Max 3 Alpha? Whatever. Basically unplayable at a skillful level. Why is that? Because you cannot hit the diagonals on the D-pad. It is nearly impossible. The quarter turn or whatever, not really able to do it on the PSP. You got to use the analog nub, and if you're kind of picky about how you play your games, you're not going to be that cool with it. Of course, I could still get some gameplay out of the thing. I had fun. It was enjoyable. But you know what? That shows right there that when they were developing the system, that, of course, during their play testing and all of that, when they were checking it out, they said to themselves, oh, this shit looks really nice. These games look really good. Unfortunately, I can't hit that diagonal on the D-pad. But you know what? That doesn't matter. That's just there for show anyway. These games that we're going to pump out, they're going to be these console-like experiences. And, you know, just use the fucking nub, guys. You know, that is most likely... That is the attitude that Sony took with the PSP. This sort of do things our way or don't do them at all. This very narrow mindset. This lack of peripheral vision and the type of games that would come out for this system. And that shows that with the PlayStation 3, they were going for graphic capability and fancy tech stuff while missing the basics. The thing is a nightmare to program for. No one is interested in programming for the system if it wasn't for the PlayStation 2 and PS1 and the fact that Japan hates everything that's American made. The PS3 would not be making a profit or doing as well as it is today. It is basically getting by due to the name as well as some of the exclusives the developers have made for it. But if this were any other system, it would not be doing that well. And I do kind of feel bad about saying this. I mean, you got Heavy Rain, you got Infamous, you got Uncharted, you got Disgaea, all of these great games coming out for the system. But you know what? They're kind of one-offs every once in a great while. There is not a heavy truckload of exclusive games for the system. All of the multiplats usually end up sucking for that system unless it's Final Fantasy 13. And what else can you do with the system? Play movies on it? Unfortunately, while I really like the fact that I can play Blu-rays and I've amassed a somewhat decent collection over the years of Blu-rays, and they look good on that expensive-ass television that I previously mentioned, what can it do in terms of games? Unfortunately, the online experience is not nearly as good. Perhaps it's due to the lack of a community, but just the interface in general, not nearly as good as the Xbox 360's. And that's really a lot of my disappointment with Sony. There are I'm really on the fence about whether or not I respect Sony as a company. Why? Because while they do push tech, and tech is something I am occasionally fanatical about, they've made some jackass decisions as well. They have blocked games that I would have liked to play on their systems, but you know, they didn't really fit in line with their vision of how the US game library should be. Because, you know, Tales of Destiny 2 on the PS2, if that were to dare hit the shelves, that would be taking room away from these generic ass sports games and first person shooters and other shit games that aren't worth playing. Pretty annoying. So that's my take on that. Let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.